Hello! I hope you all are enjoying this beautiful Monday morning. Today we're going to go over the Parent Infancy course that I taught at the library. The focus is on topics such as preparing the environment for your infant's independence, nutrition, healthy sleep habits, and getting into a good daily routine. There is this concept called exterogestation, which means the second pregnancy, if that makes sense. So it's a phase that lasts about 9 months, and it's after childbirth. So humans are some of the most helpless creatures when they come out of the mother's womb. So the first 9 months during exterogestation, it's vital that the infant remain with the mother because they're creating this beautiful bond. And it's a very sensitive period in which lots of transformations are taking place. And the psyche of the infant is significantly more impacted than the external movement or the physical body. So it's really important that the child remain with the mother during that second, it's like a second pregnancy. They call it exterogestation, exterogestation. I think that's how you say it. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's the process of the mother transforming from a woman into a mother, and then the child transforming into the son or daughter, and that bond that's taking place between the mother and the child. It's based on love, it's based on food, breastfeeding, human milk, and it's based on sensory stimulation. There is an author by the name of Ashley Montague. It's a man. And he says there are basic needs or drives that we need to be aware of in the first few weeks of life with the infant. These needs are vast. There are several of them, and we often underestimate, the needs of the infant because some people, when you're observing them, it seems like they're just so helpless and they're laying there. And so it's vital that we understand these needs so that we can do our best as prepared adults to meet them. So without further ado, here we go. The needs are love, friendship, sensitivity, organization, curiosity. They need to be able to think soundly. They need to be able to know what's going on around them. They need to have the opportunity to learn and to work. They need to be able to grow their sense of wonder. They need to be able to experience playfulness. They need to develop their imaginations. They need to develop their creativity. They need to have a sense of open-mindedness, flexibility, experimental-mindedness, explorativeness, resiliency. They need a sense of humor. They need to experience joyfulness, laughter, and then they communicate with their tears. It's important that they have a sense of optimism, and it's vital that we incorporate dance and song into their environment at this stage. All throughout life, obviously, but they love it. You can tell. And the most effective way to incorporate the needs of the infant is to simply slow down and take the time to observe them, and then follow the child. and you'll see. There's so many sensorial things going on, incorporating the senses at this stage that we need to be aware of. They have this strong inner drive to develop all the components of their human potential harmoniously. And so those are some of the needs that Ashley Montague spoke about. These are the 5 basic needs that Dr. Montanaro discusses in her book, Understanding the Human Being. She emphasizes, number 1, direct contact with mother. That is very important. They receive the special food, which is the human milk. It has that very important protein, taurine, in it that cannot be found in formula. And then even when you're pregnant, you're communicating with the baby. You're communicating constantly. You're communicating as you're changing their diaper. You're communicating as you're feeding them. You're communicating as you're holding them. And when you're holding the child, you're holding them in such a way so that they can see the environment around them. So you want to hold them to where, as they grow older and they can hold their head up, they sit in such a way to see outwards. So you'll kind of hold them in the crook of your arm with their bum right here, and then your arm is with their legs, and they're kind of in a little sitting position as they're sitting up so that they can see everything around them. They love to be in nature. They love to see the flowers and the plants. They love to listen to music. They love to watch you speak. They're learning as they watch you move your mouth and create words. It's very important. This is number 2 of the basic needs. It's very important that we respect their biological rhythms. So they have unique timetables. Each newborn is on their own time frame. So it's heartbreaking to see the hospitals put the children at such a young age on a schedule where they all eat at the same time and they all are taken to their mothers from the NICU at the same time, and each infant is unique. So thankfully, this book was written, I believe, in the 1970s. I'll check and see, but it's been many years since then. However, some hospitals are still putting the children on a schedule. I have noticed, though, that a lot of hospitals are letting the baby be in the room with the mother now. So that's wonderful. And if you take the time to prepare in advance, this is my own personal experience and my opinion. Of course, do your research. Make your own choices. Do your research. I had a significantly more positive experience in a birth center than in a hospital. There was more one-on-one. It was more peaceful. And so if you do have access to a birth center, if you're having a healthy pregnancy, I highly recommend you look into that experience. It was much more positive for me than a hospital. The 3rd basic need of the infant is order. It is very important that the infant experience an ordered environment, an ordered schedule, consistency. They are setting their frame of reference for their new life here with you in this world. So when they're passing from one environment to another, it needs to be trauma-free. It needs to be peaceful. So for instance, if you're taking them to their doctor appointment, you want it to be as peaceful and calming as possible. I had the blessing after having my second child, my daughter, in a birth center. I had the blessing of the nurse coming to our home to check on her and make sure that she was healthy, and they did the APGAR test, and ran some blood work. So if you do have the option of having the nurse come to your home when the child is so young, this is ideal. So you need to set up the environment in advance. You need to know in advance where you're going to feed your child, where you're going to change your child. I never use changing tables because I think it's really important to get on the floor with your baby. And as the child grows older, Maria Montessori encourages that all bathroom experiences take place in the bathroom. So you change the baby on the bathroom floor. And I always just use one of those pads. They have plastic pads that come with the diaper bags now that you can wash. And then I would use a baby blanket, and we always just did it on the floor. I never used a changing table. And then I did my best to use cloth diapers as often as possible, and that's simply because the child can feel the sensation of the urine. They're more sensitive to it, whereas with the diapers today, they can pee in it 2, 3, 4 times, and it holds all that pee, and then the baby gets used to that and ignores the sensation. And so this comes with observation from the prepared adult, who's the parent, observing when they are trying to take off the diaper, or they're just uncomfortable. You can see it in their face. And then toilet learning takes place much faster with cloth diapers when they can feel it. And then if you're in a warm environment, I highly recommend letting the infant, not the infant, obviously, this is an older child. I believe I read somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I read somewhere that in Japan they are able to toilet learn as early as 9 months old. So if you're in a warm environment, I recommend them being naked in the home. It's when they urinate, they have the sensation of it going down their leg. They don't like that, and so they will go to the toilet. And you just do your best to clean up. Show them how to clean up. Let them watch you clean up any messes that may happen, and cloth diapers. So when you say order, we're talking about the order of the environment, the frame of reference for the child in their new life here on earth. You have a place where you feed them. I had one of those chairs with an ottoman. It was a very comfortable padded rocking chair, and I nursed my children there most of the time. It was in their room next to their bed. And then number 4 of their basic needs, this ties into number 5. Number 4 is sufficient space for unhindered vision and movement. It is very important that you give the infant an infant bed. So in Montessori, they don't use cribs. When you see the assistants to infancy classroom, there aren't any cribs, because the child needs to be able to see their bedroom. When you put bed rails in front of their face and they're looking up at a white ceiling, it doesn't help them to develop their sensitive period. So you want a crib mattress on the floor, comfortable padding on the floor. If you have a carpet, that's nice for the side of the bed. I used a crib mattress on the floor, and I laid down with my children on the crib mattress. You want a very large mirror in the room behind the mattress or on one wall in the bedroom so that they can go to the mirror and see themselves in it. They love it. There are a series of mobiles that you can find on www.amigusa.org. I've referenced this website many times in my videos. This is for the Association of Montessori International. They have information, wonderful resources for families on their website, and you can find the mobiles that they use above the baby's bed that are for different stages throughout infancy. The first one is black and white, and then they change based on how far away the child can see. So you'll need to move the height of it and the colors, and as their brain develops, they are able to see more colors, and it helps them develop their vision. And it's amazing observing an infant watching one of these mobiles. They love it. It's beautiful to watch. So unhindered vision and movement, and that also relates to carrying them in such a way that they can see their external environment. I also used a Moby wrap. It became really hot. I was in Santa Clarita at the time, in Southern California, and so a friend of mine made one for me out of gauze, because the Moby wrap's like a polyester material, and the gauze material made it easier to breathe. It was like a breathable material, so it was much easier for the baby inside of the wrap, my son, and it was much more comfortable for me because I wasn't sweating as much. It's just a much more comfortable material. It's about 30 feet long, and they call it a wrap. It's wonderful. I will reference it in the description. And I was studying attachment parenting at the time. It's a wonderful opportunity to bond with your infant, and it makes it incredibly convenient to breastfeed. So number 5, this, like I said before, it relates back to number 4. It's very important that the infant have the opportunity for exploration in their new environment with all of their senses. They want to hear human voices. They want to hear music. We as parents are prepared persons. So we're prepared in the instance that we look into their needs. We're familiar with their needs, and we prepare the environment in advance for their arrival. The child has such valuable experiences at this very young age, and they love the flowers and nature. They love trees. They love watching moving objects. When you're going on walks and they see like a stroller pass by, they love just watching vehicles and bicycles. We, as the prepared persons, are their aid to life. We follow the child. So let's talk a little bit about language expression in the very first few months of life. In the first 6 to 8 weeks, it's called the symbiotic life. And we have a few phases that the child goes through. The first one, that it's important that we pay attention to these concepts in the symbiotic life, which is the first 6 to 8 weeks. The first concept is holding. The child has gone through a little bit of trauma in their childbirth. You want to make it as peaceful as possible because they're recovering from that. And there's a passage that takes place as they're growing in that second pregnancy, if you will. As you're holding the child as the mother, your feelings are being transmitted to them. So be aware of that. And it offers them a reassurance and a sense of security to be held with you. The two of you are creating a very important bond. And this bond develops a sense of trust that establishes a foundation for the rest of their lives. That sense of trust to be with their mother in those first several weeks is vital for a child, a young adult, and a grown adult to have that feeling of security and that sense of trust with other people and their environment. It's developed at a very early age. And then we need to be very mindful of handling the child while we're changing them, while we're bathing them, while we're interacting with them and carrying them. Oh, this takes me to strollers. As the child's watching objects move in their environment, Montessori discourages strollers because the child is very capable of moving on their own. If they are indeed walking, you let them walk. They love to walk for miles and miles because they're mastering their sense of movement. Obviously, we have our own needs, our own schedules as adults. Sometimes we need a stroller, for instance, in the airport, or if we're going from one place to another. And this is why I used my wrap until Greg could crawl, or until he could walk on his own and wear shoes. So he was, safely with his feet covered in public, depending on where we were at. But the wrap was priceless. And you can turn the baby around in the wrap and have them sitting in such a way so that they can see their environment. And I only used my stroller on rare occasions. And so the third concept in the symbiotic life is feeding. And this brings us to the idea that Dr. Montanaro talks about, where it kind of takes us back to pregnancy. So again, we're talking about the first 6 to 8 weeks of life. And when you're breastfeeding, she describes it as going back to become a single person again. The maternal bond, the human milk, that feeling of attachment is a direct union between the infant and the mother. And so she highly encourages breastfeeding. There is a basic trust that is established. We talked a little bit about this. This sense of trust is crucial because it affects the child throughout their entire life. The course is called Assistance to Infancy for the 0 to 3-year-old in the Montessori training, and it starts in the womb. It starts with pregnancy. And we are preparing people to become assistants to infancy. You're an aid to life with this child. And I mentioned before, taurine is only found in human milk, and it's a very important ingredient that the child needs for development. It's very vital that we protect the physical and psychological welfare of the mother and the child during these first few months of life, because they're creating this special bond and they need to stay together. A lot of times when the infant is crying, if you're doing your observations, you may notice that it's because of sensory deprivation. So that's why we encourage the mobiles. That's why we encourage having the floor beds so that they crawl faster, they walk faster, they scoot faster, and the mirror. And then tummy time, interacting with them. So at the time that this book was written, it said that infants need anywhere from 20 to 21 hours of sleep as soon as they leave the birth canal, when they first enter our world. This is not the case. As you observe your child, you will notice that they have so many different needs, and they don't sleep as often as some of that research back then stated that they do. Sometimes they're sleeping because they're bored. And then, unfortunately, some parents assume that they're hungry when they're not, and they're offered food when they don't necessarily need it. And there's just so many different needs that we need to be aware of and that we need to nurture with them and let them explore. It takes about 2.5 hours for them to digest their breast milk. It's very important that we let the child detach him or herself from the breast. So this goes back to following the child. Let them finish eating. Maria Montessori believes that if you're forcing a child to eat, it's a form of child abuse, because their mouth is one of their physical barriers. So to force them to eat is not healthy. It's traumatizing. It's scary for them. And then the idea of taking their food away when they're not done eating is also, imagine if you're trying to enjoy your meal and somebody comes up and just takes your plate away and you're still hungry. So, try and have a sense of empathy when it comes to our infants. The next subject we're going to talk about is the presence of the father. In this day and age, especially following, COVID and the pandemic, a lot of people have become innovative and they're thinking outside the box. I notice a lot of people have online businesses. A lot of people have set themselves up in such a way so that they can spend a lot more time at home, both as mother and father. And if you have this luxury, that is priceless. My son's dad had paternity leave through his work. That was a wonderful blessing. He had 6 weeks off. I was a stay-at-home mom, so I had the blessing of being able to be home and focus solely on our son. It's very important for the infant to see the bond between the mother and the father. There is a sensitive period for paternity and maternity in the infant's life. The contribution of the father is vital for their well-being. The father is caring for the child, talking with the child, playing with the child. And you may notice that in a lot of preschools and child care centers where children start as early as 6 weeks of age, they're surrounded with only women. And this is an unnatural environment. We need to realize that the infant will realize much more of his or her potentialities if they have the presence of both the maternal and the paternal energy. It's also important that the parents, the mother and the father, attend a childbirth course so they can learn about how to solve some of the problems together. So it's not only vital that the mother and the father provide material blessings for the child, it's also important, not just their material needs are met, but it's also important that they both play with the child and interact with them, and that the child has paternal energy as well in their life. We talked a little bit about this earlier. The development of the psyche is much more advanced than that of the body, the physical body. There's an amazing book that gets into the science of it. I recommend taking the time to kind of let it sink in, because it's a technical book, but it is very informative and helpful. It is written by Dr. Maria Montessori. It's called The Absorbent Mind, and it talks about even this early stage in life with infancy for the child. It's important that we're aware of nonverbal communication as well as verbal communication, and the energy that we're giving off with the child, the bond that we're creating. The language development, let's see here, there are 2 stages. There's the pre-linguistic, which is from before birth to 10 to 12 months of age, and then there's the linguistic stage, which is 12 to 36 months. In pre-linguistics, the work is hidden within the child. The human voice is very important. Their cry varies. If you observe them, you'll notice a difference in their cry. You'll notice a difference in their breathing intervals. And after about 2 months of age, they'll start to modulate their voices. At 3 to 4 months, they're starting to make vowels, and they'll sing them clearly. They make sounds with the vowels. And then 5 to 6 months, they're beginning to incorporate the consonants and mama, dada, papa. 7 to 8 months, they can imitate gestures, such as clapping hands. The gestures initiated by the parents. And at 12 months, they begin to form their first words. Then you have the linguistic phase, and the linguistic period, and this is accompanied by 2 phases, which is the locutory phase, which is from 12 to 20 months, and the delocutory phase, which is from 20 to 36 months. It's very important that we're aware that the infant has a deep hunger for words, and we're always pouring language onto the child. And a schedule. It's really vital that we maintain a very flexible schedule with feeding and the environment, that we're aware of the infant's needs, and we realize the role that they play in their lives, because it's a very sensitive period. Mother and father both present if father works out of the home, or if mother has to work out of the home. The time that you do spend with your child in the evenings, make it as precious as possible, or possibly on the weekends, your days off. Pour language onto the children. Prepare their environment. Spend as much time as you can exploring the world with them and helping them to transition into this new world after their childbirth as harmoniously as possible. That about sums up our course. Please feel free to ask a Montessorian if you have any questions. We have an Instagram, Ask a Montessorian, TikTok, Ask a Montessorian, and a YouTube channel, Ask a Montessorian. Thank you so much for joining me here today, and I hope you guys enjoyed this course. Have a great day.